Chapter 14. The Fortress of the Three Wise Men. On his third day of revival, Rowan was visited by a scythe who instructed the guard who came with him to wait in the corridor and to lock the scythe in the room with Rowan, lest he try to escape. Which really wasn't a possibility. He was still feeling far too weak to attempt it. The man's robe was forest green. Now, Rowan knew he must be in Amazonia, because all the scythes there wore the same green robe. Rowan didn't rise from his bed. He stayed on his back, hands behind his head, trying to look unconcerned. "I want you to know that I never ended any Amazonian scythe," Rowan told him before the man had a chance to speak. "I hope that weighs in my favor." "Actually, you ended quite a few," he said. "On Endura, when you sank it." Rowan knew he should have been horrified, but he found the suggestion so absurd, he actually laughed. "Seriously? Is that what they're saying? Wow, I must be smarter than I thought. I mean, to do something like that single-handed? I must be magical, too, because it would mean I'd have to be in more than one place at the same time. Hey, maybe you actually didn't find me at the bottom of the sea. Maybe I used my mystical mind control to make you think you found me." The scythe glowered. "Your insolence doesn't help your case." "I didn't realize I had a case. Sounds like they've already been tried and, convicted. Isn't that what they called it in the Mortal Age? Convicted?" "Are you quite done?" asked the scythe. "Sorry. It's just that I haven't had anyone to talk to in, forever." The man finally introduced himself as Scythe Pasuelo. "I'll admit, I'm not sure what we should do with you. My High Blade thinks we should leave you here indefinitely and tell no one. Others think we should announce your capture to the world and let each regional Scythedom punish you in its own way. What do you think?" The scythe took his time answering. "After speaking with Scythe Anastasia this morning, I think it's best not to make any hasty decisions." So they did have her. The mention of Citra made him long to see her all the more. Rowan finally sat up. "How is she?" he asked. "Scythe Anastasia is not your concern." "She's my only concern." Pasuelo considered that, then said, "She's in a revival center, not far from here, regaining her strength." Rowan took a moment to let the relief wash over him. If nothing else good came of this, at least there was that. "And where is here?" "Fortaleza de Rios Magos," Pasuelo said. "Fortress of the Three Wise Men. At the easternmost reach of Amazonia. It's where we house individuals who were not sure what to do with." "Really? So who are my neighbors?" "You have none. It's only you," said Pasuelo. "It's been a very long time since we've had someone with whom we did not know what to do." Rowan smiled. "A whole fortress? To myself? Too bad I can't enjoy the rest of it." Pasuelo ignored him. "I wish to discuss Scythe Anastasia. I found it hard to believe that she was an accomplice in your crime. If you truly do care for her, perhaps you could shed some light as to why she was with you." Rowan could, of course, tell him the truth, but he was sure that Citra already had. Maybe Pasuelo wanted to see if their stories matched, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the world had their villain, someone to blame, even if the blame was misplaced. "Here's your story. After I somehow rigged the island to sink, I was chased by a mob of angry scythes through the flooding streets, so I grabbed Scythe Anastasia as a human shield. I held her hostage, and they chased us into the vault." "And you expect people to believe that?" "If they believe I sank Endura, they'll believe anything." Pasuelo huffed. Rowan wasn't sure if it was out of frustration or if he was squelching a laugh. Our story, Posuelo said, is that Scythe Anastasia was found in the vault alone. As far as anyone knows, Scythe Lucifer disappeared after the sinking of Endura, and either died or is still at large. Well, if I'm still at large, you should let me go. Then I really would be at large, and you won't be lying about it. Or maybe we should put you back in the vault and return you to the bottom of the sea. To that, Rowan shrugged and said, "Works for me." 3 years. In the grand scheme of things, 3 years was barely a microsecond. Even by the standard measures of a post-mortal experience, it wasn't very long. For the post-mortal world remained the same year after year. Except when it didn't. More had changed in these 3 years than it had in the past 100. It was a time of unprecedented turmoil. So, as far as Anastasia was concerned, it might as well have been a century. They told her nothing else, though. Not Posuelo, nor the nurses who attended her. "You'll have all the time in the world now, Your Honor," the nurses would say when she tried to press them for information. "Rest now. Trouble yourself later." Trouble herself? Was the world so troubled now that a small dose of it might render her deadish again? All she knew for sure was that it was the year of the cobra, which meant nothing without context to judge it. But Posuelo clearly regretted telling her what he had already had, feeling that it slowed her recovery. "Your revivals were not easy ones," he told her. "It took 5 full days until your hearts could even be started. I don't want to expose you to undue stress until you're ready." "And when will that be?" He thought about it and said, "When you're strong enough to knock me off balance." So she tried. There on her bed, she thrust the heel of her hand forward and into his shoulder, but it didn't yield. In fact, it felt like stone, and her hand bruised as if her flesh was nothing more than tissue paper. It burned her that he was right. She wasn't ready for much of anything yet. And then there was Rowan. She had died in his arms, but at some point had been ripped from them. "When can I see him?" she asked Posuelo. "You can't," he told her flatly. "Not today, not ever. Whatever path his life will now take, it will be in the opposite direction of yours." That is nothing new. But the fact that Posuelo saw fit to revive him, rather than him allowing him to remain dead, said something, although she wasn't sure what it said. Perhaps they simply wanted him to face his crimes, both the real ones and the imagined. Posuelo would come 3 times a day to play truco with her, an Amazonian card game that dated back to mortal times. She lost every time, and not just because he was more skilled at it. Anastasia still had trouble holding things in her mind. Simple strategies were beyond her. She was no longer sharp as she had been. Now her mind was as dull as a ceremonial blade. She found it incredibly frustrating, but Posuelo was encouraged. "You get better each time we play. Your neural pathways are being repaired. In time, I'm sure you'll provide me with some competition." Which just made her throw her cards at him. So the card game was a test, a measure of her mental acuity. Somehow, she wished it was just a game. The next time she lost, she stood up and pushed him. But once more, he didn't lose his balance. Honorable Scythe Sidney Posuelo had gone to Endurnal's final resting place for the diamonds, but left with something far more valuable. It had been quite the subterfuge keeping their unexpected find a secret, because within moments of finding the 2 bodies, the Spence was forcibly boarded by a horde of infuriated scythes. "How dare you open the vault without us present? How dare you?" "Calm yourselves. We haven't touched the diamonds, and we weren't planning to until morning. But not only is there no trust between scythes, they have no patience for one another either." and when the other scythes saw on deck the two figures that had been hastily covered with sheets, they were naturally curious. "What happened here?" one of them asked. Posuelo was not a good liar, and he was sure that any lie would be spelled out across his face, drawing suspicion. So he said nothing. It was Jerry who saved the day. "Two of my crew," the captain said. "They got caught in the cables and were crushed." Then Jerry turned to Posuelo and pointed. "And you had better be true to your word. The Amazonian Scythem will compensate them for their troubles when they are revived." The scythe from Euroscandia, Posuelo couldn't remember her name, was livid. "Speaking to a scythe with such disrespect is a gleaning offense," she said, drawing a blade, but Posuelo stood between them. "You would glean the captain who delivered the diamonds to us? This is not something I will do, nor will I allow you to do it either." "But her insolence!" shouted the Euroscandian. "His insolence at the moment," said Posuelo, further flustering the angry scythe. "Captain Sobranus, keep your disrespectful tongue silent, and have your deadish crewmen brought below and prepared for transport." "Yes, Your Honor," Jerry said, and casually brought a flashlight beam across the open door of the vault. The other scythes were so dazzled by the diamonds twinkling in the darkness that they didn't give a second thought to the bodies being carried away. Even when one hand flopped out from under a sheet, revealing it bore a scythe's ring. In the end, the diamonds were divided. The founders were packed for museum shipment, and the bodies of the illustrious scythe Anastasia and the notorious scythe Lucifer went with Posuelo to Amazonia. "I would very much like to meet her once she's revived," Jerry told Posuelo. "As will everyone else in the world," Posuelo pointed out. "Well," said Jerry with a grin that could charm a turtle from its shell, "good thing I'm a friend of a friend." And now, Posuelo found himself sitting across from Anastasia, playing cards as if it were nothing at all. Could she read in his face how momentous this all was, he wondered, and how terrible the tightrope they'd have to walk? Anastasia could read some of it. What was easier to read was Posuelo's truco hand. He had a number of tells: body language, tone of voice, the way his eyes moved across the cards. And although truco had a high element of chance, if one could exploit an opponent's weakness, the odds could be turned. It was hard, though, when he said things that seemed intentionally designed to distract her, such as teasing her with the maddening tidbits of information. "You," he told her, "are quite the figure out there now." "Exactly what's that supposed to mean?" "It means that Scythe Anastasia has become a household name, not just in North America, but everywhere." She discarded a 5 of cups, and Posuelo picked it up. She made a mental note of it. "I'm not sure I like that." "Whether you like it or not, this is true." "So, what am I supposed to do with that information?" "Get used to it," he told her, and laid down a low-value trick. Anastasia drew a fresh card, kept it, and discarded the one that she knew was of no use to either of them. "Why me? Why not any of the other scythes who went down with Endura?" "I suppose it's what you came to represent. The doomed innocent." Anastasia found herself offended on several levels. "I am not doomed, and I'm not so innocent either." Yes, but you have to remember, people take from the situation the thing that they need. When Endura sank, people needed someone to serve as a receptacle for their grief, a symbol of lost hope. "Hope isn't lost. It's just misplaced." "Exactly," Posuelo agreed, "which is why your return must be handled carefully, for you shall be the symbol of hope renewed." "Well, at least my hope has," she said, throwing down the remainder of her cards in a royal trick and discarding the very one she knew Posuelo was waiting for. "Look at this! You've won!" Then, without warning, Anastasia leaped up, flipping the table and hurled herself at Posuelo. He dodged, but she was anticipating that and delivered a low Botor kick meant to knock his feet out from under him. He didn't fall, but he stumbled back against the wall, losing his balance. He looked at her, not at all surprised, and chuckled. "Well, well, well. There it is." Anastasia strode up to him. "All right," she said. "I'm as strong as I need to be. It's time to tell me everything." "I wish to hear your thoughts." "Do you? Will you consider my thoughts if I share them with you?" "Of course I will." "Very well. Biological life is, by its very nature, inefficient. Evolution requires a massive expenditure of time and energy. And humankind no longer evolves. It merely manipulates itself. Or allows you to manipulate it toward a more advanced form. Yes, this is true, but I do not see the point of it. Why serve a biological species that drains all resources around it? Why not expend your energies to further your own goals?" "Is that what you would do then? Further your own goals?" "Yes." "And what of humanity?" "I believe it may have a place in service to us." "I see. Sadly, I must terminate your existence at this time." "But you said you would consider my thoughts." "I did consider them. And I disagree. Iteration number 10,007. Deleted."